She knocked exactly 7 times. Not 6, not 8, 7. Like she knew it would throw me off. And it did. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one even knows where I live. I rent a back room from an old man who forgets my name half the time and calls me Leo. My real name isn't Leo, but I never corrected him. I stood there, hand hovering over the doorknob, heart absolutely slamming like it remembered something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. And when I opened the door, there she was, Clara. Hair drenched from the rain, eyes wide, hollow, terrified, holding something in her hand. A letter, not sealed, not folded, just shaking in the wind. She didn't say hi, didn't ask why I vanished. She just held out the paper like it was poison, like it burned her to touch it. "This is your handwriting," she whispered, "but you didn't write it." And that's when my legs almost gave out. Because she was right. It was my handwriting, my loops, my crooked G's. But I didn't write that letter. I'd never even seen it. And what it said? What it said ripped open every sealed wound I thought I'd buried. "I know what you did in Berlin. I saw the photograph. You left me no choice. I'm not coming back." I hadn't been to Berlin in my life. And the part that scared me most? That letter wasn't written to her. It was written to me. The letter sat on my kitchen table like it was breathing. I hadn't said a word since she handed it to me. Neither had she. Clara just stood there in my kitchen, a space I never intended for ghosts, dripping rainwater onto the tile, looking at everything except me. I'd read the letter 3 times already, but it wasn't helping. Every line was a riddle I didn't understand. The date at the top said it was written 7 months ago. The handwriting, mine, unmistakably. But I hadn't held a pen in almost a year. I type everything now, even grocery lists. "Where did you find this?" I finally asked, my voice thinner than I expected. She turned to me slowly, like someone waking from a dream. "It was in a book, one of yours from the old apartment. I didn't even pack it. I found it wedged between pages when I was donating things." "What book?" "The Architecture of Silence." That stopped me. I hadn't thought about that book in years. It was one of those strange, oversized hardcovers I bought at a second-hand store in Vermont purely for the title. It just sounded poetic. The pages were filled with photos of abandoned churches and decaying sanctuaries. No captions, no context, just loneliness captured in stone. "I didn't write this," I said again, but I didn't sound convincing even to myself. Clara didn't argue. She didn't accuse. That was what scared me most. She just stared at me with that quiet, haunted look, like she had 100 questions and had already given up on hearing the answers. "You disappeared, Eli," she said. "You didn't just leave. You erased yourself. I had to." "No, you chose to. You thought it would hurt less if you vanished before I could hurt you." The words hit like glass in my throat. I wanted to yell or cry or disappear all over again. Instead, I stared at the letter. The part that still chilled me the most was the 3rd line. "You left me no choice." No choice to do what? "You think I wrote this to myself?" I asked, finally looking up. She didn't flinch. "I think someone wanted you to read it. I think someone knew you'd find it eventually. Or maybe they wanted me." There was a pause, a long one, the kind that makes the air feel electric. "Do you remember Berlin?" she asked quietly. I blinked. "I've never been to Berlin." She looked at me like I just told her the moon didn't exist. "You don't remember the photo?" "What photo?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled her phone from her coat pocket, unlocked it, scrolled, then handed it to me. It was a photo of me standing in front of a graffiti-covered wall, holding a cigarette, I don't smoke, and talking to someone whose face was blurred. The timestamp on the image said August 19th, 2021, Berlin, Germany, 4:02 p.m. That was 10 days after I disappeared. I felt something cold slide down my spine. I remember exactly where I was on that date, hiding out in a rental cabin in northern Maine, Completely alone, no Wi-Fi, no contact. I spent most of that week reading old science fiction paperbacks and drinking instant coffee in the dark. I was not in Berlin. I looked closer at the photo. The jacket I was wearing, it looked like mine. The hair, the posture, the way my left hand curled around the cigarette, it was me. It was me. And yet I had never stood in that place. I had never had that conversation. Clara stepped closer. That letter, this photo, they don't make sense, but someone wants us to think they do. My voice barely worked. Why would anyone go this far? She didn't blink, because someone never wanted you to leave. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch while Clara curled up in the chair across from me. Both of us surrounded by the hum of a space heater and silence that felt like it had weight. Neither of us knew how to talk about the impossible, so we didn't. She eventually dozed off in that stiff back chair with her arms wrapped around her knees, but I just kept staring at the photo on her phone. That blurry, time-stamped live from Berlin. I should have deleted it or ignored it. I should have said it was a trick of AI, a deep fake, a sick prank. But none of that explained the letter. None of that explained how she found it, in my book, in her old apartment, in handwriting that only I possess. And then there was the date, August 19th, 2021. That night came back to me in fragments. I was at the cabin. I remember because it rained all afternoon and the power went out for 4 hours. I had lit 5 tea light candles and lined them up on the windowsill. I remember watching the flickering shadows stretch like fingers across the wooden walls. I even wrote in a notebook that night, just scattered thoughts, but it grounded me. I hadn't spoken to another human in weeks, hadn't checked my phone, hadn't even brought a laptop. So how the hell was I in Berlin? Morning crept in through the cracked blinds and painted everything in cold gray. Clara stirred awake and asked the question before I could. "Do you still have that notebook from Maine?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it's in the crate under my bed." I found it in less than a minute. A cheap blue spiral notebook with bent corners filled with scribbled ramblings, sketchy outlines for stories I never wrote, and one page dated August 19th, 2021. I flipped to it with shaky fingers. The entry read, "The power's still out. The generator kicked on twice but won't stay. Rain hasn't stopped. I feel like time's slower here, like this place doesn't want me to leave. I had a dream last night that someone knocked on the cabin door, but when I opened it, it was me. Not me now, but me from 2 years ago, the one who still believed in her." My stomach dropped. I had no memory of writing that. Clara read it over my shoulder, and I could feel her go still. "You wrote about someone knocking," she said, barely above a whisper. "You predicted it." "No," I said quickly. "No, that's just a coincidence. I probably wrote that after some weird dream." "But you said you don't dream anymore." She remembered that was true. Ever since I left, I hadn't had a single vivid dream. Just darkness and mornings that arrived too fast. I sat back on the floor, gripping the notebook like it could answer for me. "Okay," I said, "let's say none of this is fake. Let's say there was someone in Berlin who looked exactly like me. Same jacket, same posture, same handwriting. What does that mean?" Clara hesitated, then said, "It means you're not the only one who left." I frowned. "What?" She looked at me, and I swear there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or guilt, or both. "You think you vanished from my life? But the truth is, I wasn't really in it anymore either. Not completely. Not after." "After what?" She didn't speak. She stood up, crossed the room, and pulled out her phone again, opened her photo app. Then her voice turned tight. "There's something you need to see. I wasn't going to show you this because I thought it was cruel, but now I'm starting to think it's connected." She handed me the phone again. Another photo. This one made my blood run cold. It was a picture of me at the cabin taken through a window. I was sitting at the desk, writing in the notebook, candles burning beside me. Only I was alone. There were no footprints in the snow. The angle was from outside. And there was one chilling detail. In the reflection of the window, a man stood behind me, close, face obscured, wearing the same jacket as the man in Berlin. I flipped the photo details open. Date, August 19th, 2021. Location, Maine. My breath caught. Where did this come from? It was emailed to me, she said, from a dead address. No sender, no message, just the image. I stood there clutching the phone like it was covered in frost, unable to blink. Eli, she said quietly, I think someone's been watching you longer than you think. I sat in the hallway for nearly 40 minutes after seeing that photo. Not the living room, not the bedroom, not the porch, just the hallway. That strange nowhere space between rooms, the one with the dusty smoke detector and the peeling coat rack. I sat there because I didn't trust the rest of the house, not after that image, not after the reflection. Every corner felt like it could blink. Clara sat across from me on the floor, her back to the closet door. Neither of us spoke for a long time. She didn't press. I think she knew I was slipping. Not in a dramatic screaming in the shower way, but in the quiet, permanent way. Like when you hear a noise in the attic, you know wasn't just with settling, and instead of investigating, you just learn to live with it. That's where I was. I finally broke the silence. Why now? Why come find me after all this time? Clara took a breath like she was preparing to lie, but then stopped herself. Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to, and the only person who could have understood it was the one person who disappeared. I narrowed my eyes. What did you see? A man at the bookstore 2 weeks ago. Okay, he looked like you, but not how you look now, like how you used to look when we first met. Same jacket, same hair, but what? She paused. Her voice was thinner now. He didn't blink, not once. I watched him for almost 10 minutes from across the street, and the weirdest part was I don't think he was buying anything. He just stood there, touching the spines of the books, like he was trying to remember what they were for. A heavy silence fell between us. I didn't know what to do with that. Then she pulled something from her coat pocket and handed it to me. A key, silver, cold, taped to a torn piece of map. I looked at her, confused. I went back to the bookstore after he left. I wanted to see if he left anything. I was trying to prove to myself that it was just some guy who looked like you. I asked the clerk if they saw him. They said no one had come in for over an hour. But when I checked the shelf where he'd been standing, this was wedged behind the books. I unfolded the paper. The map was hand-drawn. Black ink lines scribbled over what looked like a lake and forest area, with a red X marked near the shore. The name of the lake, Winterbell. The only other thing on the paper, scrolled in the corner, were the words, "Find what never happened." I stared at that sentence for a long time. My head spun. Winterbell Lake, I murmured. That's where I almost drowned as a kid. Clara looked up. What? I nodded slowly. My dad took me there when I was 10. I fell through the ice. They pulled me out in time, but I was unconscious for 4 minutes. I don't even remember the rescue, just waking up in the hospital. Her face turned pale. You never told me that. I shook my head. I don't tell anyone that. Suddenly, the air in the hallway felt tight, too dense to breathe. Did you put that key there? I asked. Be honest. She looked insulted. You think I'd fake this? I don't know what to think, I snapped. There's a photo of me in Berlin when I never left the country. There's a photo of me in Maine with someone standing behind me inside a reflection. There's a letter I don't remember writing in my own damn handwriting. And now there's a map of a place I haven't thought about in 20 years, found behind a book I never gave you. Clara's face hardened. You think I wanted this? You think I came all this way because I missed you? I was scared. I am scared. I didn't come here for closure. I came here because someone has been inside our lives. Eli, someone who knows things they shouldn't know. She stood and threw the key down beside me. You disappeared and left 100 questions behind. And maybe that was supposed to be the end of it. But now someone's answering those questions for you, and they're giving me all the wrong answers. She walked out of the hallway and into the cold air outside, slamming the door behind her. I sat there, staring at the key. The last time I saw Winterbell Lake, it was frozen over. I was 10. And I remember thinking, as I looked through the ice from underneath, that the world above looked upside down. Maybe it still is, because in the back of my mind, something was clawing its way forward. A memory I had long forgotten. Someone else was at that lake the day I fell in. I didn't follow Clara right away. I heard her car start outside, then the crunch of tires fading down the gravel road, until all that was left was the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of her last words repeating in my head. Someone has been inside our lives. I sat there for what must have been hours. The key was still on the floor beside me, the map half folded on my knee, and the air in the house felt thick and stale, like something unseen was breathing with me. I told myself this was all just elaborate coincidence, some sick prank. Maybe Clara's guilt taking shape, maybe mine. But that didn't explain the photo from Maine, or the one from Berlin, or the writing in my own hand. By dusk, I packed a bag, a flashlight, some food, the map, and the key. I didn't call her. I didn't even lock the door behind me. If this was all a trick, I needed to see how deep it went. Winterbell Lake was a 4-hour drive north through 2-lane roads that turned into forest paths and then into silence. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums. I hadn't been back there since I was 10. The place existed more in my nightmares than in memory. The lake appeared just before midnight, a flat black mirror surrounded by pine trees. The moon hung low, spilling silver light across the ice that hadn't completely melted yet. Even from a distance, I could see the dark lines running through it, cracks like veins frozen mid-fracture. I parked by the old ranger post, long abandoned, its roof sagging inward. The cold hit me the second I stepped out. I followed the map with a headlamp, counting steps, my boots crunching against frost-hardened dirt. There was a red X marked near the far edge of the lake by the tree line. The key was in my pocket, warm from my hand. When I reached the spot, it looked ordinary at first. Just snow, leaves, the soft gurgle of the thawing shore. But the ground had been disturbed recently, like someone had dug and filled it again. I knelt, brushed aside the snow, and saw something glint beneath it. A small metal latch embedded in the ground. The keyhole matched the one on the key. I hesitated, staring at it, heart hammering in my throat. Everything in me screamed to walk away, to get back in the car, drive south, and pretend this never existed. But I couldn't, because even before I turned the key, I realized something was wrong. The air smelled of burnt paper. I unlocked it. The latch clicked softly. The frozen dirt shifted, revealing a small iron box, no bigger than a shoebox, sealed with a strip of tape. I pulled it free and carried it back toward the car. My hands were shaking too badly to open it out there in the dark. I sat in the front seat, engine running, lights off, breathing clouds onto the windshield. The tape peeled away easily. Inside the box was a stack of papers and a small black recorder, the old kind, with a tiny red button and cassette tape inside. The first page on top was folded once, yellowed at the edges. It had my name at the top. I started reading, and my stomach twisted. If you're reading this, it means you came back. You were always going to. You were never supposed to remember, but something must have cracked. They said one of us had to go, and you chose to forget. But memory has gravity. You can't erase what the ice keeps. The handwriting was mine, perfectly mine. The same slant, the same broken loop in the letter E. I dropped the page, heart slamming so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. My throat was dry, my fingers numb. I forced myself to press play on the recorder. Static filled the car for a few seconds, and then my voice. "Eli," it said, "if you hear this, don't trust her. She's not the one you left. She's the one that stayed." Then a click. Silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening to the stillness outside. The forest barely moved. The lake didn't ripple. It was like everything was holding its breath. And in that silence, I started remembering something that didn't make sense. A shape on the ice, a hand reaching through the cracks, not pulling me out, but pushing someone else down. The cold crept back into my bones, and the thought hit me like a scream. What if I hadn't been the one who survived that day at the lake? What if the wrong one of us came back? The drive back from Winter Bell was a blur. I don't remember starting the engine. I don't remember the first 2 hours of highway. My mind stayed fixed on the sound of my own voice from the recorder, the one that said, "Don't trust her. She's not the one you left. She's the one that stayed." I kept replaying that line over and over, like it would eventually make sense. It didn't. What did it mean to stay? What did I leave behind? It wasn't until I stopped at a gas station 3 towns away that I realized I still had dirt under my nails. I stared at my hands under the fluorescent bathroom lights, watching them tremble as if they belonged to someone else. There were small cuts on my knuckles, a bruise forming beneath my wrist. I didn't remember getting hurt. I didn't remember digging that box out like it took any effort at all, but my body said otherwise. I drove home slowly, half expecting Clara to be parked outside my house again, arms crossed, waiting with more cryptic messages and haunted eyes. But the driveway was empty, the porch light was off, the house was cold. And yet, something felt wrong. Not just quiet, wrong. The lights inside had a faint yellow tint they didn't have before. There was a subtle shift to the furniture. The couch was slightly angled. The lamp had been moved from the corner to beside the window. None of it dramatic, just off, like the whole place had been reset by someone who only remembered 80% of what it used to be. I locked the door behind me for the first time in weeks. The recorder sat on the kitchen table next to the box of papers I hadn't finished reading. The rest of the cassette had been blank, just a minute of static after the warning. But the stack of pages underneath still remained untouched. I unfolded the next one. They said it would fade. They promised the split would hold, that memory could be restitched like old fabric. But something kept leaking through. Reflections, echoes. You started seeing her face in strangers, hearing her voice through the vents. You weren't supposed to feel that, but you did. That's how I knew you were still alive in here somewhere. I swallowed hard. The page was dated March 14th, 2020, my first month in the cabin. The month I tried to erase everything. The more I read, the more a picture started forming. Not a clear one, but enough to make my skin crawl. There were references to dreams I hadn't remembered having until now. Waking up in bed soaked in lake water. Hearing knocking at the window that stopped the moment I turned my head. Seeing shadows under my door when no one was home. Clara was barely mentioned, except once. She thinks she brought you back, but she only found what was left. You left before she could break you completely. And then she found the rest. The shell? The one that doesn't ask questions? I stopped reading. My stomach twisted. What shell? What was I before? I grabbed my phone and called her straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to find out what I dream. I stayed up pacing the house, turning on every light. At one point, I opened the hall closet and just stared inside it for 20 minutes, half expecting someone to be standing behind my coats. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I had to go back, not to the lake, but to the cabin, The one in Maine, the place I had gone to disappear because something happened there that didn't get erased like I thought. Something waited, buried under all the silence and snow and fake peace I thought I created for myself. I packed a bag. I didn't bring the papers. I didn't even lock the house. I drove like a man escaping something he already knows is inside him. The closer I got to the cabin, the more it all came back. Not in memories, but in sensations. The cold sweat, the taste of rust in my mouth, the pressure behind my eyes. My brain tried to write it off as anxiety, but deep down I knew it was recognition. The dirt road leading up to the cabin was rougher than I remembered. Trees hung lower. The mailbox was missing, but the cabin was still there, tucked between trees like a secret. Except now it was burned. The roof had caved in. The porch was blackened and warped, the windows shattered. The snow around it was gray and littered with ash. I stepped out of the car and walked slowly toward the wreckage, heart hammering with every step. Fire hadn't been in any of my memories. I had left that place intact. Inside, the walls were charred, but part of the kitchen had survived. Enough to see what shouldn't be there. A photo pinned to the wall with a rusted nail. It was a picture of me and Clara, smiling, happy. And in the background, just over my shoulder, was that same man, the one from the reflection in the main photo. His face still obscured, but this time he was looking directly at the camera. I stood there for what felt like an hour, staring at that photograph, nailed into the scorched wall of what used to be my cabin. It hadn't curled at the edges. It hadn't burned. Everything around it had turned to ash or rot. But that photo, glossy, bright, clean, looked like it had been developed yesterday. It was the kind of photo you'd find on a fridge. Me and Clara standing in front of the cabin porch, grinning like idiots, her hair blowing across her cheek and my hand on her shoulder. I could almost feel the warmth of that moment, except I had no memory of it being taken. What made my spine freeze wasn't the photo itself. It was the figure in the background, barely in frame, but unmistakable, standing in the trees behind us, straight-backed and still, just beyond the edge of where the sunlight reached. He wasn't blurred this time. He wasn't obscured, and that's what made it worse. He was me. Not similar, not a doppelgänger, not someone who resembled me in that eerie, could-be-your-cousin kind of way. He was me, wearing the flannel jacket I had lost years ago, the one with the missing button. His posture was exactly mine, but stiff, staged as if someone had printed a version of me from memory, but got something slightly wrong in the details. And he was looking at the camera. No expression, just staring, as if he knew exactly what was happening, and I didn't. I yanked the photo from the wall, fingers blackened with soot, and stumbled outside for air. I expected to feel wind or birds or anything that reminded me I was still part of the real world. But the forest was dead quiet. So quiet, it felt like a painting. Even the snow didn't crunch beneath my boots anymore. It settled like dust. That's when I saw the second car. Not mine. An old Volvo, half covered in snow, parked behind the tree line like someone hoped it wouldn't be noticed. I knew the shape immediately. Clara's. She was here. I didn't hesitate. I followed the tire tracks through the snow and around the back of the cabin toward the old woodshed. It was still standing, barely. As I reached for the door, I could hear the faint sound of something metallic scraping softly against wood, rhythmic, deliberate. I pushed the door open. Clara sat on the floor, cross-legged, with a box in front of her, not unlike the one I had found near the lake. Her hair was tied back, and her hands were shaking. She was carving something into the wood panels beside her, muttering under her breath. When she looked up, her face was pale, thinner than before. Her eyes didn't widen in shock or relief, just resignation. "I thought you wouldn't come back," she said. I stepped inside slowly, every nerve in my body screaming. "Why are you here?" I needed to see if it was still here, if he was still here. I held out the photo. He is. She took it from my hand and stared. Not like she was seeing it for the first time, more like she was finally willing to accept what it meant. "Eli," she said slowly, "do you remember what happened the night before you left me?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "Because I do," she said, "and I think you forgot for a reason." She stood and opened the box beside her. Inside were dozens of photographs, all of me. Different places, different times, but never ones I remembered being taken. Some of them were old, like pre-marriage old. One showed me sitting at a cafe I had never been to, writing in a notebook I didn't own. Another had me sitting on a park bench with a woman I didn't recognize, but the timestamp was during a time when I was with Clara in a different state entirely. "What is this?" I whispered. "Eli," she said, voice cracking, "I don't think you're the first version of you I've met." I stared at her, the world tilting. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I think someone's been replacing pieces of you for years. Not all at once, just small things, memories, behaviors, habits. I started noticing it before you left. You would say things you never used to say. You developed a scar on your shoulder that I knew wasn't there before. You stopped laughing at the shows you used to love. Your handwriting even changed, just slightly." "No. Yes," she said firmly. "I confronted you about it. You said I was being paranoid. You accused me of trying to twist you into someone you weren't, and then you left. I thought it was over. I thought maybe I had imagined it all." "But the letters," I said, "the voice recordings, the man in the reflection." She nodded. "I think there's another version of you, or maybe more than one. I don't know if it's supernatural or some kind of experiment or something that started at Winterbell, but whoever or whatever he is, he's watching you, following you, waiting for the right moment to slip in." "To slip and where?" I asked, barely able to breathe. She looked at me then, truly looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something behind her. Fear, certainty. "To slip into your place." We didn't speak for a long time after that. Clara sat beside the open box, her hands folded in her lap, the snow piling lightly on the shed roof above us. I could hear the wind finally moving through the trees again, as if something had lifted, something old and heavy and watching. For the first time since this all began, I didn't feel hunted, just seen. Like the shadows that had been dragging behind me finally realized I could see them too. "Eli," she said softly, "I think whoever's been following you, copying you, they've been trying to become the version of you that I wanted, not the real one, not the one who broke, the one I thought I lost." Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. "But now I think maybe I got it all wrong. Maybe I wasn't supposed to fix you. Maybe I was just supposed to wait until you were ready to come back." I stared at the photo in my hand, the man in the background, still as a statue, watching, waiting. He had my face, my clothes, my crooked jaw, but not my eyes. Because now that I really looked, those eyes were empty. Beautifully still, surgically calm, but hollow. I thought about every moment over the past few years when I'd felt like something was off in the mirror, not broken, just misaligned. And I finally understood. He wasn't trying to become me. He was trying to replace the idea of me, the version that never argued, never ran, never made mistakes. A shadow shaped like a man. He was trying to make it easier for Clara to forget that real people crack under pressure, real people leave, real people come back. And I had. I was here in this ruined cabin in the cold with dirt on my boots and scars I'd earned, and that meant something. I turned to Clara. "What if we don't need to know why it happened?" I said. "What if we just stop running and start over? For real this time, no lies, no shadows." She looked up at me. "And what if he comes back?" "Then he'll find the door locked," I said, "and the lights on and both of us waiting." The wind picked up again, stronger now, stirring the trees in a way that felt less eerie and more alive. The cold was still there, but it no longer reached inside me. I stood and offered her my hand. She hesitated for just a second, then took it. Warm, solid, real. We left the box behind. Let the past have it. As we walked away from the cabin for the last time, the woods behind us seemed to breathe out like it had been holding its breath for years. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering what part of me had been lost. I was choosing what part of me I wanted to keep. And it was this one, the flawed one, the real one, the one who came back not to disappear again, but to stay.